Hello, everyone. Welcome to xyzpodcast. I'm Gary. You are now listening to the third episode of Constructing Worlds, co-curated by Rebecca and Clarissa. So, from the two previous episodes we already had with Hasano and Zidek from Central Worlds, and basically, Constructing Worlds is an exhibition which explores the making of our worlds through representational methods between pre-colonial Malay archipelago and monsoon region. And I think it's very interesting to have notoscale, and we already sort of had some conversation earlier in other episodes as well. If you're interested, feel free to check out Milo Ice episode. I don't remember which one. I can remember the one we did it with Kawal, Hazik, and Joey. So if you are interested in that sense, like to understand more the behind the scene and also how we curate conversations and also topics in podcasts, because Sam himself also hosts a podcast on R Plus on Spotify as well. So if you're interested, feel free to check it out. So today is the final episode, and I thought it's particularly somehow resonate with me very well of this topic called Somewhere and Nowhere. And I think somehow vibrate a certain idea where do we really know Malaysia as an identity or Southeast Asia as a geographical location or position? And both Adra and Sam, they sort of experimented with a lot of kind of media. If you can check it out on their website, from objects to painting to prints. I think those are pretty much express this kind of curiosity and thirst for knowledge. And both of them are actually graduated from Uni of Greenwich, and coming from a architectural background, I think what we can learn from them is also other ways of doing architecture in a way, to see art from an architectural point of view, but at some point they are also being an artist, and then to look at architecture from different perspective. So without further ado, hi Sam and Adra, really nice to see you here.
Hey,
How are you
thanks,
guys doing?
Gary. Thanks for having us.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for
I
having
mean,
us.
not bad lah. Not bad.
Okay, all is well, all is well.
All is well lah.
So like I mentioned earlier, Somewhere and Nowhere, it reminds me of this idea of somebody and nobody. And it's like, I always question myself on access of information in a way. You can't say something is not exist when our capacity or our boundary of researching is limited. In a way, you can't say there's nothing because it's
Correct.
because our gate is not there. So would you like to tell us about these particular works that you did for constructing worlds, and how do you see the idea or the definition of worlds in this sense?
Ken? Aja, you want to go first?
Well, in terms of like making the worlds, like in our processes, we would imagine a scenario first, sort of like creating a design brief or understanding a design brief. And that would be like through understanding like issues and like that surround that particular subject matter. And we would have like responses, like, or think of responses to react to that kind of scenario and issues, essentially. And those things would essentially build a backdrop of that world that we create, like a closed world environment. And like in terms of like in designing, we would maybe already imagine or think of the aesthetics for that world, like the details or its parameters that we wish to like embark on to create that alternate reality bridge between like the world that we currently live in and also the world that we are creating. So like a very like main component of like most of our works, I think, is that we let the viewers create their own meanings for the worlds that we present in our works. But we don't essentially like explicitly describe the details of that world that we want them to imagine. Because we think like maybe like we give like maybe 60% and 40% is to complete that work is like comes from whoever views our works. So
I
Yeah.
think I would add like for the constructing world one, the idea of the world making is limited to the web
Mm,
lah. So
Right.
we had to
yeah.
sort of create a world where with limited technological prowess of HTML5,
Right.
try
And
to
the
do
cargo side.
whatever, yeah, and the cargo side to do to create a strong enough world that people can get lost in. So I
Right.
guess with the world somewhere nowhere, we wanted people to get lost in, to wander around within our images, our videos, our GIFs, our hyperlinks to
Yeah.
other places. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. Also, it's not just about the content, but the context of preparing that content is also one of the things that somehow curating the
Yeah,
works
true.
that you presented or exhibited on the website.
Mm.
Yeah.
And there is one more thing I would like to add is that after I visit the website, after I leave the website, I feel
Mm.
like I can't remember anything. It's not because it's not memorable.
I know,
It's
I know.
because the
It's bombardment,
experience
right?
is, yes, it's the environment, and
Yeah, yeah.
somehow the experience is very dual into this website, because this
Mm.
website is not limited on visuals, also audio. When you go
Yeah.
in there, you can feel like, the surround calling, and also
Mm.
Yeah.
the bird chirping.
Mm.
So after I turn off my computer, it's just blank. It's just back to real world. And I think it's
Mm.
very interesting. There is this kind of mirror or realm that I was there, but it's not there. So
Mm.
would you like to
Mm.
tell us about this as well? And perhaps this could link to the second question I would like to ask Sam and Adra, respectively.
Mm.
Sam, because compared to your previous works, usually you did in a hard copy in a way. Like I remember the one you did in Malaysian with Lele. So
Mm.
that one is using Van block.
Mm.
So, and the question for Adra is that, is this the first online art exhibition that you did? I mean, perhaps for both of you, it's kind of refreshing. And what is your reflection or thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this would be our first
First
proper, like, well,
proper
yeah,
lah.
a bit more thought through digital exhibition.
Yeah, betul. Thought through
Because
lah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you can't count a website, because that's more like, you just we try not to think of this like digital space as just like a white, like sort of like the white box format where it's like a white
Mm.
page and you put your image. Of course, like I think it's better to utilize that digital space as another space, because the logics of virtual space is different from our physical space. And it would be like a missed opportunity for us to not take advantage of how we can play with that to
Right.
assist with our works,
Right.
or present the works in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a good run that we had with it, and we think we might expand more onto digital space now lah, given the
It's
context right now.
it's an interesting format. Macam when we were presented with the brief to do it on the website on Cargo, macam we thought of macam we the first thing we wanted to do, we didn't want to showcase our work macam so that people know it's our work. It's like
Right.
so we wanted it so that people can't differentiate on that site which is our work and which is information from other sites. So we really wanted to blur the boundary between the viewer and the and us lah, the creators. So it's because I think macam in the past year we've seen a lot of online shows definitely. And everyone's been trying to replicate the physical world, macam either like a SketchUp room and then you put your artwork on the wall.
Right.
But and then you're really missing the point of the vastness of the web, where you can hyperlink stuff, you can jump from one material to another material, you can go into literally a rabbit hole of information, just clicking on things like forever ever going in there. So I think that's what's been missing within online shows. It's been really, I still don't understand why people treat the web, the digital space as a physical space. Because it really isn't, and it shouldn't be limited to macam us replicating the real world.
Yeah.
That would be limiting lah. Yeah.
And I'm not sure, do you get this kind of feeling where, for example, like SketchUp you did mention, I think it's very interesting. I mean, in architectural practice wise, when modeling is compared to physical model, you can super glue and then you maybe use some force and then it will get the effect that you want. But then in here in HDMI with all those codings, you can't use force. You have to get that perfection to make it complete. So is this something new for you? I mean, to approach to coding and to try things out with data or information, or even you have to visit tutorials to learn how to use cargo site.
Well, technically, we didn't do much like detailed coding because cargo
it's
sort
not
of like
hardcore
help.
yeah.
It's not hardcore lah. Like cargo sort of facilitates most of like the commands that you can do.
It's like simple HTML additions lah, like adding audio, sound, and then changing a few parameters here and there. But it's nothing crazy. But I would say it's a good introduction lah to actually design your own digital space. It's not bad.
It's sort of like being given simple tools, but how do you make something good out of it?
The best out of it lah.
Yeah.
How do you maximize?
Yeah. Exactly.
And because I always thought that the previous two artists, they have different kind of approach as well. Like Hasano, when I read his paintings previously in some other big one, and usually it triggers this kind of senses with a still life idea. And then Centaur's games much more on approaching this kind of interaction. And I thought the works that you both did is much more a combination of both. It's about this kind of embracing this kind of technology and skill that are available on cargo side. And this interaction is very interesting also, where it allows the visitors or the participants to combine the collages. Would you like to tell us about these collages? I think the art of making collages has been always, it's like a signature of notoscale. Of course, you try not to say that this is what I wanted to do, right? And these collages somehow, especially in the most like a painting, the black and white painting or engraving illustration, with this kind of juxtaposition or this kind of contrast where you put a huge machine in kampong. And I thought in a bad term, I would think it's a sarcastic way, but it's a very interesting sarcastic way. It's a witty way to show that, what if we place a machine here, will make the kampong atas or not? Or to make the whole kampong to look more, more technological or more up-paced and developed. Would you like to tell us about that?
Do you mean the thought process of putting like juxtaposing that thing?
Yeah, and also I'm curious, why did you put like the tank, especially? Why don't you put a tower instead, or something like Amazon machines or factory, big factory inside there? Yeah.
So one of the things we looked on earlier is, so there's the aspect of pre-nation states which is the Malay archipelago. So our general theme for our Somewhere Nowhere world is that it's a past that we cannot recollect, and then with a future that we cannot fathom.
Right.
So in a way, it's actually a take on current Malaysia. Actually, it's actually like where are we now? Where are we heading towards? And do we really understand how we're getting there? Macam tu lah, basically. Yeah. So basically, those machines you see, they're actually, I would say, objects of no place, like server renders, mobile server renders, so like mobile server farms. One of them is like the tank is actually like a neutrino detector for detecting rogue nuclear explosions. So it's things, it's technological things which exist right now that we cannot grasp. Much of current Malaysia, we cannot grasp it, even though it's available now. So it's saying that we can't even grasp technology that is available now, and then we don't even understand our past. We can't even recollect the things even 200 years ago. Like my images, the ones that we collected, most of it is from is around that era, like 1800s. Specifically because we entered from the viewpoint of the explorer and naturalist Alfred Wallace.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's really trying to recreate a fictional world for the viewers.
So I'm also curious how Adra working with Sam. I mean, of course, you both have been working for quite a while, and in this sense, I wonder what is your thought when contributing into this manifestation of this idea on the website. It's more on the approach, and do you actually help filtering what kind of information, or do you help with to come up with new ideas and also new images or things to improve the whole the whole project?
Well, I think how we usually work when like anything that comes our way really is that we usually like discuss on how we can take the best way forward with the project in terms of mediums and resources. And we basically discuss on a general theme to explore. If we're talking about roles defined, I think our roles are actually interlinked and intermixed between each other and sometimes interchanged. We both like just sort of like jot down like ideas or how we react to the brief given, and that's usually like the first round of exercise of that take, and then we work up to create the concept and narrative, and execution wise, usually that's usually how it goes.
Right. And in this sense, Alfred Wallace is a huge inspiration of this project. I wonder, is there any other resources that sort of filtered away before Alfred Wallace? Have you ever thought of other channel to contribute, but then it's not make it this far? Maybe perhaps you might inspired by some because I noticed two articles that you attach as well. One is a Javanese version of Hamza Nama, and another one is Majapahit. So these two become like a subtopic to contribute to this idea. So
Correct.
why Alfred Wallace became the prime example of this drive of the show?
Oh, I see. Well, macam when searching out for the initial reaction lah to this show, macam somehow we knew that we wanted to do something. We did because at that time, I think we were thinking about futuristic things, but we didn't want to illustrate a futuristic future because usually when when it comes to creating futuristic images, it's always a bit cliche.
Right.
We realize in terms of how do you imagine Malaysia in the future, because by then we already have a preconception of a future that someone else has done. So so our references right now are all Western references, most of it for the future. The future is very Western centric. So it's very hard to do a future for Malaysia or an image of that which is totally original. Because because we are very much like we have like Western references like basically, right?
It's hard to imagine one without like accidentally like having some of those Western ideas leaked into the works lah. I mean, we tried to imagine one previously with the Architecture Fairy Tales project one, the plot about like the future of Malaysian agriculture and having like the robotic kebun and stuff like that.
The one in the oil palm estate, is it?
That one.
That one is much more straightforward, where you can see the approach is very straightforward with drones, with robotic birds, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
still,
that,
I mean,
that's when we realized that.
That was our attempt lah.
It's hard lah trying to do a future macam image for Malaysia in a sense. So we started to look back, like more on we want to think about the future, but we have to reflect on the past first.
Right.
So macam and we wanted to do it beyond the idea of Malaysia lah. We wanted to do it beyond the formalization of the nation state, which is Malaysia, Indonesia, all that countries lah. So one of the earliest visual records around this region is actually by Alfred Wallace. In a sense, his biography of going through the various macam areas within the Malay archipelago, Sumatra, Celebes, and then towards the Papua New Guinea, kan. So macam and then he accounts very detailedly macam the the architecture, the animals, the species, the culture kan. So in a way that would be the entry point that we have for an early visualization of Malaysia, because we don't have a lot of images. We don't have
Right.
photography,
Right.
1800s. So that was the entry point for visual lah. But and then we try to connect it with the theme of non non-objects or um technological items which cannot be, which do not have a specific macam they're non-place lah. They can be displaced anywhere. So where in our brief we talk about like identities lah macam
Right. Right.
yeah, because most of our identities are now globalized and
Yep.
decentralized in a way online.
Yep.
So and
Yep.
then where is it exactly do we pinpoint the issue of identity when we're decentralized already? It's just an ideology that we're stuck to lah in a way with the idea of the political nation state lah. But and then we wanted to be removed from that lah actually.
Right.
I don't know if
So
it makes much sense though, but
I think it's very interesting because to your approach, because based on the project that you mentioned, the plot is much more on let's talk about future. I will do future for you. I will do sci-fi and everything for
Yeah.
you to exaggerate this kind of effect. But
Correct.
in order to tell what is future, you can do non-past is also kind of like a future, you know. So it's like
betul.
in order
Yeah.
to make it black, you add on more black. But this kind is you remove white, is actually kind of like a black also. So to create this kind of opposite forces to exaggerate the opposite, that's quite interesting. And I think it's not as straightforward as the plot, because this one it takes some time to digest, to understand that,
Correct.
oh, actually you are
Yeah.
using a witty way to celebrate the past so that we can move forward, kind of thing. And this is very interesting. I would like to ask the second question is that, because Alfred Wallace has been mentioned in the Charles Darwin's book Origin of Species for quite a while, and I really like that book, because that book is not about, you know, we glorify the idea of whether it's a selfish gene or, you know, or about, you know, sapiens, this kind of idea, but rather is the approach to write a book. And technically the book is like a social media back then in their time, you know. It's like a propagation weapon in a way. It's like a tool, and this tool somehow make Charles Darwin's famous in a way, and people start to realize, oh, where Darwin's was study, where he lived. But that's where the problem, I would say, is the problem with Malaysia, is that the identity is not found, because we do have a lot of resources. So that's why Alfred Wallace sort of bring this kind of bridge where, in fact, Malaysia has a lot of things, but it's just that you haven't found that gap. So I wonder, what do you see in this sense on social media, or even the bridge or the broadcast in our information age? In a way, do you think we abuse it, or we actually need it more than what we ever imagined?
You mean like
You
a
mean social
commentary
media?
on
Yeah,
social
in
media, or
speaking of
just
social
information in
speaking
general?
of social media, and also I think the exhibition itself is kind of like a social media in a way to broadcast the information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand.
And I think generally, I think I also quite curious, how do you see social media as well? Because we always see the things that appear in front of our eyes. What if the things that is not appear in front of our eyes, you know, it's not, I mean, we do have a lot of talents, but it's just that there is no social media or channel to push us forward. Yeah. So I wonder, what do you think in this sense?
I mean, personally, I think it's a tool lah. Macam tak kisahlah dulu when Darwin had journals and papers to push himself forward with. It's the same with whatever media that comes along after that, newspapers or ads or, you know, billboards. Now it's connected. It's all. I think it's all the same. It's always been the same. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Macam you were talking about theory of evolution by natural selection, correct? So that one. So the thing is that Alfred Russel Wallace has always been sidelined as the co-author of that theory alongside with Darwin.
Yes.
So in a way, it's because Darwin pushed the journal out first.
Right.
He pushed it out first, and he got the name first.
Right.
Whereas poor Wallace was actually in the Malay archipelago.
Yes.
He was in the forest, so he didn't know lah that this other guy actually somehow macam
Take the credit.
take the credit, and then he published it first, and then because he had the media first, the media, he
Yes.
had the more connections, he had the more
Yes.
networks, he was an aristocrat, so you could say that he used that platform to further his
Yes.
agendas. So
Yes.
it's the same like that we see in Instagram or social media.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
exactly the same tool.
And I think because Darwin also mentioned a lot of times on competitions as well. And I think this competition is not among the individuals anymore, but rather it's a competition between informations. It's like
Yes,
Google,
correct.
right? You have G
Mm.
O O O O O O and all, right? You won't
Correct.
go to the third O or fourth O. You only G O. That's it, right? You won't go far. So among the information, they are actually fighting for survival, kind of thing.
Betul.
I mean, this I think this analogy also can be applied in design process as well. You have 10 models, but why only one got chosen? So I think that's quite sad in a way, but it's quite brutal and realistic. So
You
so
could
I,
say
yeah.
that that the theory of evolution by natural selection also like makes sense towards media in a way.
Yeah. And one thing that I would take from natural selection is that the only things that we picked up the option is because that thing do more goods, or it does less harm. So that's why we picked that idea of project, and then we are more confident with that growing or evolution. And in speaking of growing or this kind of anticipation for future, there is this particular sentence I really like, is that in an era, is in the statement saying that in an era where technology and global economy has shaped much of our current global, and this sentence somehow exert a kind of expectation for future, and we place this kind of future or excitement on machines. Like Corbusier sort of like really
Yeah.
expect and really place a lot of hope on on machine, saying that machine is the future. But what if we place this kind of hope and optimism on the past, and the past is always like a poor wallance, at the back. What we see is only Darwin's. So I would like to ask Adra, what do you think on this, like this kind of interplay or contrast to show that machines, or of course they are future, but then should we really believe fully on machines?
Personally, I think not fully. I would say because I still don't believe that machines can really have human touch, because there's a certain element in human that you need in order to, like, say when you create a work, there might be when an artist creates a work, it might come from some sort of like emotional past, or like the built up of experience that they go through, like in living this world so like how can a machine possess that very same experience and emotion in order to create the same kind of works? Like maybe it's like an oppression or some positive experience, and usually those are like maybe drivers for someone to push to create, to produce something. I mean, that's my personal view lah. But however, I do think I see. I mean, if we want to talk about like just generating technology, I do think that it's good in terms of for us to maybe develop and I don't know, like better our society in a sense, maybe.
What about you, Sam? I think that's sort of reflecting the idea where we trusted machines so much, and actually how effective it is, we still don't know, because we only glorify it, and then we congratulate machines as the future of the direction at that, the light. It's like
it's still human made though. That's
it is,
the thing.
yeah, it's true.
That's another thing, like it's human made, so there's
But I think it's
still
because I might add to Adra, it may be because of the narrative. It's just a Western centric narrative that macam, because there hasn't been any other narrative of a technological future besides the one being presented by the West. And if you see Japan has a very macam technological future, but it's very I would say more human. The human controls the machines
More
more
humble
than
as well.
yes, correct, more humble as well than the Western view of technology towards the future. I think so. Macam that poses the question back to us: where do we position the machine within the future of Malaysia? Is it
Mm.
is it as a tool to help us move forward, or is it taken explicitly from the West punya model and
Yep.
used so that we just replicate that model? So
Yep.
we've never had those questions for ourselves though, because contoh for example macam all these billionaires, right, like Elon Musk,
Yep.
Bezos, and where we are now confirming like trying to align to the future that they want,
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
that they're spending on macam going to Mars, macam doing
Yeah.
electric cars. That's the future they want, and because they
Yes.
have the power, that's where
Yes.
we're heading. But it's not the future for everyone in the world.
Yes.
So that's the
Mm.
problem. That's the problem. There's not a lot of narratives to say otherwise.
Yeah. But I think that's where I would say is the power of media that controls people's mind. It's like a certain countries, I won't say what lah, but it's they control the media in a way you are controlling someone's mind. What kind of
Yep.
information, if I want you to learn, then I'll give you what. If I don't want, then I can just delete it off, and then you will forget about everything. And I remember this particular incidents when I was attending. Fahmi Reza was giving a talk in KL. He was talking about history books, our history textbook. It was written so politically in a way that we already know one side of a political party, and another side we just forget about it. So, in speaking of this kind of publicity, I would like to ask something rather deviated from the exhibition, where both of you actually educated in London. So I wonder, this kind of Western culture, does it affect you in a way how to run a practice in speaking of marketing, in a way, quote unquote marketing, and also publicity? Because notoscale is kind of like well established and kind of well known in young architects community. So how do you see that sense that the idea of sharing is not becoming hard selling? And
Understand.
when do you think hard selling is actually necessary in a way to bring yourself into a certain platform to share the knowledge? Because I always thought the works that you share on Dezeen are great, and those are worth sharing, but it's just that you don't want to abuse the quality of it.
Understand. Yeah, that's a good question.
What,
to be
what do you
honest.
mean by hard selling?
Yeah, so I mean, perhaps we don't have to go for hard selling, but it's much more on the idea of how to run a social media.
What do you mean by hard selling, though? I just want to understand.
Hard selling in a way, seeing the works until like, hey, I see this too often, and then I start to feel disgusted in a way. Of course, notoscale works is not really that until that level yet. Like, I think so far I really like the long dining table. That's a really nice one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think? I mean, I don't think anyone come to you and say, hey, you are selling your ideas too hard or too forceful. I think that's not we hasn't really approached that level yet.
Well, I would say that I think I would like to think that we've taken the good out of what we've learned out of our education in London in order to like push our practice forward. Because I think when I think about it, it's sort of like something that benefits everyone. It doesn't like, it's not very one-sided.
Yep.
So I mean, and of course, like we've taken like advice, probably like just emulated like how our own tutors push their own practices, because they're also like considered like small people trying to get out in the world. So to like know their struggle and all that, I mean, it's like, maybe we try that in Malaysia, like, because I guess when you see someone like pushing hard, like, and it looks very genuine, and I guess we just hope that people will see that, in a sense. And
I might add to Adra on that is, I know what you mean. And it in terms of hard selling, macam the appearance of trying to be everywhere, trying to sell the same thing all over again. But I think what we're trying to do is actually present a different alternative to the discussions currently.
Mm,
It's
mm,
just getting that alternative discussion out there hard enough that you may be repulsed, but are you doing something about it to create a different discussion?
mm, mm.
Because that's the problem with Malaysia. Malaysia, we talk too much, we don't do a lot.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
that's
So
true.
we are actually against the all talk no BS thing.
right, right,
Yeah.
Like
right.
macam we're just trying to push it out as much as possible. If you don't like it, present to us a different alternative, and then we will support it. Tapi as of
Right.
right now, the discussion is so macam sikit in terms of the spectrum within the architectural sphere or art
Right, right,
that it's not enriching anyone.
right.
So
But
macam yeah,
yeah,
if no one's pushing it, we're gonna push it.
but I think what about, because this is much more on the spirit and gesture to push or promote a certain things, but the outcome is another thing where I always thought notoscale produced a lot of works that is really, the Malaysia community or architectural scene that really needs, but at the same time, the conventional idea or orthodoxical the scene, they always demanding for this kind of idea of hard copy or object. And there is this one question from the curator's fields note, and I think it's very interesting because it was talking about non-spaces, and architecture always talking about these spaces. So
Betul.
do you see non-spaces could triumph or conquer in a way that it become like a dominant thing, where why don't we talk about architecture in a non-space
Understand.
idea? And I think it's very interesting, especially on this exhibition as well, because most of the things happens on on our screen. It's a 2D things.
Betul.
So I wonder, do you but to add on to these new layers to make it more richer, you add in sound, musics, and also there is a videos so that allow us to watch it by sort of imagining things that what we watch is actually 2D, but then in our mind is a 3-dimensional or perhaps 4 dimensions, going in our brain. So I thought the dimensions part and architecture is very interesting. Would you like to talk about that? And when you are curating these works on constructing worlds, especially, speaking of constructing worlds, it's always like XYZ kind of thing. It's not just XY kind of grid and axis.
I mean, I think Ajra can maybe explain on the non-spaces and like basically digital space, right? Our
Yeah,
explorations and
yeah.
that, yeah.
Could you frame the question a bit different?
No, actually,
Like
well, perhaps a better question I could ask is because what we tend to see architecture equal to spaces, and the major community or the general public might say, oh, you are architects, but you are not building, you are not designing a space, you're not designing a building. So I think Rebecca also raised out that very similar point, is that what if people don't understand this kind of alternative way of understanding architecture or perceive this kind of constructing worlds, the idea of this exhibition, yeah.
I think it's fine if people don't get it now. It's not meant it's not meant to be understood now. I mean, that's my simple answer lah. That's my simple answer lah.
But don't you think don't you think it will attract only very niche community where come back to this idea, my works are not very well celebrated in a way that so less people know about my work. And in this sense, I would like to question the bridging of the idea or perception of art and architecture to the general public, because they might think that art and architecture only for a certain people, only for privilege level or status. Yeah, and this understanding or the resonance between artists and general public, I think, is very important as well. I mean, would you like to be an expensive artist or the quote unquote cheap artist in a way? It's about this kind of relation. Yeah.
I think when they're like questioning whether this non-spaces, is it very architectural or because it's not like physical space. But even then, when you think about like when we're going with the future and like with digital spaces and like apa lagi lah, like right now in COVID, now everyone sort of like the public sphere sort of know the existing or are accepting of virtual spaces.
Yep.
So it can be like Clubhouse or Zoom or whatever. Those are spaces that are there. Eventually, maybe even on a surface level of understanding, I think I think it's kind of natural that you would have to sort of think like, macam digital space ni is somewhere that like we can do something about, and all these like virtual galleries that take the form of physical space, that requires knowing some level of like architectural knowledge, like even if it's just taste and design, So it doesn't like, and I guess what Sam said, it doesn't really matter whether they don't get it now, but in terms of how it's going right now, I think they will have to reconsider that, because maybe don't know, like the government suddenly do a virtual gallery for whatsoever. I mean, I saw Google do like nice Zoom meeting room. How do you design that? They may want it, like, so then it's sort of like going that way.
Because we're heading to a singularity lah, macam in terms of the physical and the digital. So it's a matter of knowing both of those spheres so that you can reinforce each other. Macam as of right now, of course, in our phase of notoscale, we're not designing actual spaces per se, but and then we are in the sphere of the digital and the virtual. But and then along the lines, there might be the phase of the physical. But and then once you know both phase, you can actually go in and out between them. Like Space Popular, that firm, Space Popular, you know how they can build real stuff, but and then they also build virtual worlds. So there's that balance of knowing both spaces, both sides of the coin. They actually like that lah.
Yes.
So
and I think this kind of combination will achieve this kind of holistic approach better, in a way, sort of telling me that I can do it, but I don't want to do it. and I think there was one pavilion by notoscale. I think it's somewhere near Petaling Street, if not mistaken, with this kind of idea of marine population pollution, if not mistaken. So with this kind of plastic bottles and this. I wonder if you can take that kind of opportunity to build something. Would you imagine this kind of constructing worlds with collages and all? Do you think, is it possible in the real world, where do you sort of envision there will be a pavilion in the middle of nowhere or in the forest?
For constructing world?
Yes.
Well, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
If we could have that kind of site,
Yeah, I would.
Essentially,
definitely,
Actually, even when like looking at this website, essentially, like if I wanted to just imagine, like just puke it out as like a spatial space, I see it as like a exhibit, like, gallery. You just have to like reverse that and see like, okay, what does that look like in website or something, or a digital space. And I think like that relationship about like thinking architecture is just building buildings. I think you have to stop have to like start thinking this is like your knowledge about space.
Right.
Sort of like general juga, take a step back. It's to know like buildings like physically is it's just one branch of it, I think, in my opinion now. And or at least like what we both think, and that's what we try to show with like our notoscale works and try to convey as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I think sorry, Sam.
No, I mean, we're even trying to go like, so the collage works, animation loops in our Somewhere Nowhere page, they're also are going to be sold as NFTs also. So we're also trying a lot of different ideas in terms of the emerging spaces of the virtual.
I think, and speaking of 2D and 3D, it reminds me of the exhibition that you did in Publica back then. It's called Sebelas House Rumah, if not mistaken. So the printing is the printing come first, or the exhibition comes first?
Drawing comes first.
Drawing comes first. And then after that you install the houses, suspended on the ceiling there. I think that would be quite interesting if, let's say, we can imagine constructing worlds in the jungle, and I can feel this kind of foraging kind of experience where
that'd be nice.
It will be exploring things. That'll be cool, right? Then we can definitely talk about it. The final question I would like to do we have questions, Carissa? Oh no, that's okay. Actually, I do have another question that is totally I think at some point somehow related to this exhibition. If you were Alfred Wallance, would you like to publish your own book as a counterpoint to Darwin, your good friend Darwin? Or would you like to just keep quiet and, until someone just waiting to credit you in a way?
I mean, he was credited, but it's just that the media knows more of Darwin than Wallace.
Yes.
But there is a link somewhere within the Somewhere Nowhere website that goes to explain, like there's a small YouTube video narrated by Sir David Attenborough.
The
So
forgotten
basically,
story. Yeah.
the forgotten story. That's really interesting. So, I mean, in a way, Wallace did come up with another essay like a few years after that, but not as a counterpoint lah. But it's just an addition to Theory of Evolution, like a supporting document. But he never had ill as a scientist. Like, macam he realizes that the good of the science, that value is much more important than his ego of you know of his ego of trying to take credit for something.
Right.
So in
Yeah.
a way, it's very, I would say, how would you say, noble lah.
Yes. Yeah.
Macam we're in a world where everything has to be credited, everything is mine, right? So
Mm.
in knowing that story from Alfred Russel Wallace, that he acknowledges that actually the siapa tu, si Darwin ni, he actually wrote a wholesome argument supporting his smaller part of an idea that feeds into
Yes.
the theory of evolution. So I think that's very noble lah. I think it's something that macam before doing this we didn't know lah about that part.
Yeah. And I thought because of Alfred Wallace, because I'm now in UK, and I realized that actually Malay archipelago is quite interesting because of this kind of I would say, is it perhaps I would call it a publicity where you get goosebump in a way. Oh, Malaysia was mentioned, this kind of idea. And then because Alfred Wallace was kind of more focusing on orang utan, if not mistaken,
on a lot of creatures lah. Yeah.
Yes. And in speaking of identity of Malaysia, and I think that's also pretty much part of the concern or interest of our curators. What would be the identity of Malaysia if, let's say, without Alfred Wallace? Do you think, would you look at into like Wawasan 2020 like Hasano, or would you look at some Malay empire, or perhaps some Javanese empire that somehow inherited into Malaysian context? I wonder what would be the alternative resources or inspiration if, let's say, you don't talk about Alfred Wallace, and I wonder how do you see the current identity of Malaysia as well?
I mean, I would answer first and then Adra could chip in lah.
Yep.
So
thanks.
macam Alfred Russel Wallace was an entry point lah. I wouldn't say he was the big inspiration, but he's an entry point to see Malaysia before Malaysia.
Yes.
But and then through his lens of a pre-Malaysia, macam along the way we discovered other facets of the Malay archipelago, like Javanese, Sumatra Barat, and then Timor. So in a way, looking from his lens of his narrations and visuals, we begin to understand the history that we lost, that we forgot. So macam, for example, I'm Javanese, but I don't know how to speak Jawa. But and then I had no idea that Javanese had actually a script before I did this research for the show.
Right.
So macam it was recently that macam actually Javanese has a script. Macam it's written, it's like Sanskrit lah, because it's Hindu based lah kan.
Right.
But macam my grandparents don't know how to write in Javanese. So it's like where did that go?
The missing link.
The missing link kan, macam we actually have a written language, but all this time macam if you ask the old guys in the kampung, people say, oh, it's oral, we don't have any written. It's like they can't be. What?
Yes.
There's no language that has no like written.
Yes.
So macam for me personally, that was the enlightening part lah of doing this show. Yeah, I don't know about Adra, what she thinks of like a future of Malaysia, macam other than but for me it's a rediscovery.
Yes.
So even if we never reach the point of figuring out what a future Malaysia is, it's okay, because as long as you know who you are at that point in time, who you are, what your roots are, you would definitely create a better future than not finding it.
Yes. And I think that's very important as well, in a way, to understand and rediscover, instead of, rediscovering is a kind of a progress, but it's just that we sort of focusing on progress as the progress, but we don't see the reflection of the past as the kind of a progress. So what do you think, Adra? I mean, do you think, I wonder what's your perspective on rediscovery of old Malaysia, old Malayas or Malay Pelago history, and also how to move forward in a way to see, I mean, both of them are actually contributing to this idea of future.
Well, actually, had we not gone down the route that we did, well, personally, I would say I would have maybe taken like the ideals, like what you said, like what was in 2020, maybe unpacked it and studied maybe each and every, and tried to find something that was interesting there, and maybe take a stance and probably create works from there lah. But unlike, because Sam's relation to it is quite personal. For me, I didn't grow up in Malaysia, so I actually am like, I don't have the same history to this country as like maybe most people do have here. Like, I basically grew up in a different country. I only came here after I was like an adult, and probably have like no actual ties to it. So in a sense, so I would probably be more oriented to studying what could have been into the future. Like what?
Yep. Thanks a lot. I think that's a very fruitful discussion, and I'm not sure. Do you have questions? No. Okay. But I have one question to ask, because I think when I was looking through the exhibition and social works, it's like a library where you have so many links and you can play around, and it also applies this kind of very diverse approach to understand and also interact with a certain exhibition. In always exhibition give me that kind of idea, don't touch kind of thing. You don't touch this artwork, you don't touch this, touch that. But this, especially this collage where you can place around, and it's very engaging in a way, even though there's this screenshot of Photoshop toolbars, it's somehow reflecting that, okay, you are more than welcome to do this. But my question would be, the scene that you set are mostly in 18th or 19th century, 18th century in the kampong area, where you inject this kind of new element into the kampong, where you can see the Microsoft tank, the underwater tank, or the data information tank into the kampong. What if we reverse it in a way that we put a modern building, we put the old building into the modern context? What would it be? Do you think that would you place maybe we can go even further, like dinosaur, you can put a dinosaur in front of KLCC or something. so I wonder, do you have any reflection on this, where you can place something from the past into the current Malaysia? Because the exhibition is much more from current things into the past. So what if now we put the past into the nowness? What would be one object that would you like to place in the current Malaysia, taking back from the past? Maybe you wanted to put some endangered species that no longer
I
here.
would probably find some machine that made a food that just like some complex, very, very complex old machine that used to make one food. I think there are, but I just can't really pinpoint in my head like there is.
It sounds like some machine or building that Maya Empire did.
Maybe lah.
What about you, Sam?
I don't know. Macam to me, it's hard. Macam the only way we could do this show was because there was an entry point. So macam I wouldn't know what to put exactly if I could displace anything at from any space in time, and then just put it into a now Malaysia, right? I think it's hard because that would make it fantastical in a way, and
yes,
I'm not sure how to respond to fantastical things. I don't know. It's, you might see it somewhere nowhere as a bit fantastical, but
yes,
we think that it's grounded from an entry point lah. Meaning there's an issue, there's a theme, there's something that can be worked on to make it. Of course, it's not plausible because it's two different time eras, but at least in the viewer's mind, you can put one and one together. Whereas if you display something, contoh macam dinosaur letak depan KLCC, it would be too much of an absurd punya move, because the viewer doesn't know what to make other than it's probably a surrealist work. So it would go into that realm of surrealist, but then it won't come closer to the viewer in terms of the reality of that viewer. Yeah.
And perhaps Haziq raised a very interesting question as well. And just now I almost touched on NFT as well, but later on we can go on that. Maybe I'll ask another things that to follow up the question, because I noticed
okay.
that you place skyscrapers in the collage as well. So this is the only so-called architecture that I saw. But apart from that, you place like human figures, or rather it's a furniture base, like modem, and
Object
also
based.
the infrastructure, yes, objects. Do
Mm.
you think, is there any building that reminds you of, it's a very contemporary building, but it looks old? This building could be anywhere. You can mention like perhaps in London or any building that you saw. It aged quite well, where you can't imagine that, oh, this building actually was built like 10 years ago. I wonder if is there any building that come across?
What's the Japanese building?
Is it the
temple?
shrine?
No, not the shrine. The square one. The capsule.
Nagasaki.
Nagasaki.
Yeah, Nakagin.
Nakagin. Capsule Hotel.
Nakagin, sorry. Nagasaki.
Yeah, that's still That's still futuristic. I don't know. To me, lah.
That's true.
Yeah.
I
think speaking of that, the Kenzo Tange and
Kenzo Tange was genius lah.
Arato, is it Aratako or something? The recent the recent Pritzker winner, and he did the expo as well, the Tokyo Expo.
Arata.
Arata, yeah. How about you, Sam?
I mean, the one that I've experienced lah, macam personally, macam I've been to Alexandria in Egypt a long time ago, 10 years ago lah. So and then I didn't know at that time, tapi macam there was this old library by Alexandria by the sea. At that time I didn't know architecture lah. I wasn't.
It was big, right?
It's actually Snow Heta.
It's like a disc with a slanted roof, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Macam, but my view was only from the roadside lah, from the tepi lah, from like a normal view angle of a person lah kan. So macam from that angle it looks like tak adalah old, tapi macam it looks like quite old lah. Macam it looks like a monument. It doesn't look canggih lah if you're on it on an eye level, but if you go like aerial view, it looks quite impressive lah.
Yeah, it looks monumental as well.
Correct. But macam it looks macam from that level, it looks like an old building lah. So and then when I found out it's actually Snow Heta, I was like, damn.
Yeah, it was the first
like
gig, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
it was the first like big public project.
antara early build public.
Early build. That was really good. Very good.
Okay, so yeah, thanks a lot for the answers, and I hope that you enjoyed the whole conversation. So maybe the last question from Haziq, I would say, is opinions on NFT, and perhaps in relation to constructing worlds. And just now we also mentioned about publicity, and perhaps you don't want to talk about NFT in the context of publicity. I wonder what is your thought or reflection on NFT in the general idea. I think my context would be NFT as a approach or a tool, like you say, Sam. So I wonder, do you have any thoughts on NFT apart from that situation or context?
I don't know, Adra, if you want to add on NFTs.
Well, it's still an area that we're currently exploring right now, but I think the main essence and idea of like why it was created, like around like art provenance and all that, I think it's actually very, very good lah. And obviously it helps empowers the creatives who are, behind like all these works. Because you take out the middleman, right? So, and also it helps bring to light like all kinds of like creative talents, like like it was for like the virtual and 3D artists who never were really like credited for their works in a way. So I think
I mean
it's a good future to head into lah for the art world. And
in relation to, I would add to Adra, in relation to macam our work, it's interesting that for the first time in technological history that
Yep.
our digital works can be sold off as an original.
Yeah, as
So
value as something.
as valued as an original. So I think
Mm.
that's something that I don't know, architects and designers should look into lah, because we're mostly digital dominant now in terms of the way we work, in terms of, and we're not just talking about art, we're talking about the way we transfer information in the future.
Yes. Yes.
Any proprietary information, any sensitive information, that can all be NFT. So in a way, we're seeing that macam it's a significant step lah in a way
It's
digital technology is going lah.
it's also giving value to like digital artifacts, like
Yeah.
because
Correct.
it's not just
Correct.
capturing works, it's capturing like a moment in time.
Yeah.
Like that's why like the internet memes go for so much, because everyone has enjoyed it and like and probably used it, and I don't know, like the keyboard cat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like banyak lah, like it's giving it's value, like it's actual value. There's a value to it in a sense, and that moment in time probably like it's a lot of people recognize that moment in time is valued. It should be valued that much.
Yeah.
It's just amazing, huh?
I mean,
But-
would you,
Yep.
Ajra, do you wanna say something about the ecological footprint of NFTs?
Yes, thank you. I was about to go there.
I know everyone wants to know that.
Ecological.
Everyone to know about this.
Everyone wants to know about that.
I would say like everything has its evils, and this is something completely new. I mean, the other day I was watching the talk by Blender Guru about, like, he was talking about, because it's a bit much lah to just attack that aspect of, you know, that aspect of NFT. Of course, like a new system is, well, it isn't perfect, but they are already like working on what, F 2.0. And there will be alternatives when there's a problem that arises. Like there's so many people like already like trying to work out how to make this more like to solve
To make
that.
it more efficient lah.
Yeah, or it could, there's another one as well, like that's not transacted in Ethereum, which is the one that takes a lot of gas apparently. It's Tezos, so it's supposed to, it apparently takes less work to do NFT. So who knows, because the fact that that exists, maybe that they will transfer to there, we don't know lah. So we'll have to see.
Macam macam contoh, I just was talking about Tezos, and that platform using Tezos as a blockchain, it takes up 7,000 times less energy than Ethereum. So we are talking about people who are trying to create new efficient ways to create blockchains lah. So of course, as a new, the things that people are overhyping the issue of carbon footprint. Of course, there's carbon offset, and people within the crypto punya world know that, and a lot of measures are being taken, a lot of systems are being developed to mitigate that. But and then it's good people are raising that question juga, sebab for the first time in history we can say that macam people are taking awareness of carbon footprint for technological punya macam reasons. Tapi it's why shouldn't be applied to questioning our current mode of contoh the global stock market. Why isn't the global stock market also not being accounted for when it consumes so much energy 24 hours, like 340 the whole year running? And then because there's no transparent ledger to say how much footprint in terms of carbon offset it uses.
It's hard to believe lah.
And also to add on that, we not to mention, you know, emails, messages,
correct,
that we already upload on the cloud. Someone gonna need for that, right?
So it's good that we should be implementing that way of transparent ledgering of blockchain onto current macam our normal way of macam doing electronic macam transfer lah.
Well, I think it's
a
a double-edged sword that we can't really solve a lot of things with just one solution. So what we can do is just reduce the impact. I think there's no such thing as a perfect solution. I think if you wanted to put NFT as a physical store, then the old problems still come back. You know, it's about this kind of middle person where the curator or the operator of a gallery still come back. That's not the whole point of NFT, right? The whole point is to get rid of that kind of situation.
Yeah.
So
I think community has like a very shared goal, like this NFT community, because they're like, I think because I feel like every week now that there's something new about it that's coming out. So, and considering how it's becoming more and more legit in the public realm, and I'm sure there's a lot of investors in it right now. So that future of it, them working into making it more like environmentally friendly, I think that's going to be the next thing that they're going to do for sure, because they now have the resources and power and the back support to do so. So I don't think I don't think they might just stick to this model, Saju. So yeah.
I mean, I would add to the cons, like, of course, there's like loopholes. Macam, right now, the loophole is that there's no one authenticating whether that file is yours to begin with before entering the funnel of minting. So there's a lot of loopholes. I mean, still, because it's just a technology, right? Macam people create technology. So it's down to the flaws of people in creating the technology. So I think it's just worth taking a note at these things, and then macam taking everything in from all angles and then creating your own viewpoint of how you can use it, how you can utilize it, or that's it lah.
I think thanks a lot for the sharing, and I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this exhibition somehow go quite far into NFTs and other social issue, or I would say is talking about publicity and social media. And I think the key word here would be narrative, where narrative is actually the conversation or the word structure that somehow allow us to understand a certain works or a certain situation, because narrative will somehow, when we see an apple, we can have different kind of description, whether would you like to say a big apple or red apple, or is it an apple next to an orange or whatsoever, right? So there are tons of ways to narrate, but somehow each narrative will bring different kind of purpose and how we see and interpret different kind of things. So thanks a lot, Sam and Adra. Really nice to have you.
Thank you.
On the discussion. I hope that we can catch up again, definitely. So, and I can't wait to see the exhibition will, go well. And then can't wait to see other works from notoscale as well. So thanks a lot, Sam and Adra.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you then. Cheers.
Good night, guys.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.